Oh yes, I'll see you in the rapture. I'll see you in the rapture. I'll see you at the meeting in the air.
This is Evangelist Henry Walker. Welcome to the podcast. I want to start a new message today talking about the exciting change that's coming before the rapture and during the rapture. But let's go to the Father in prayer first. Father, I thank you for another opportunity to minister to your people, Father. I ask you to use me just the way you want, Father. Let me say only what you want me to say, nothing more and nothing less. Help people, Father, to not only open up their spirits to receive the word, but study the word for themselves. And Father, we give you all the praise and the honor, Father, in the mighty name of Jesus Yeshua, by the blood of Yeshua. Let's go to the book of Exodus chapter 3. The Father's making room for us. He's heard our prayer, and he wants to bring us into purpose and destiny in the short time that we may have before the rapture. While you turn to Exodus chapter 3, just a reminder that if you enjoy these podcasts, share, subscribe, hit the like button, and leave me a comment. It'd really be appreciated. And if you have any questions, any praise reports, you can email me at contact, C-O-N-T-A-C-T, at henrywalker.org. I'll be so glad to hear from you. Exodus chapter 3, talking about change. Are you ready for change? I'm ready for change. There's so many bad things that are happening in the world right now, but the Father wants to make room for us to help people to realize it's the end time, to give some people one more opportunity before he closes the door of the rapture. He's so merciful. Exodus chapter 3, in verse 7. And the Father said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people which are in Egypt, and have heard their cry by reason of their taskmasters, for I know their sorrows. And I am come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of that land unto a good land and a large, unto a land flowing with milk and honey, unto the place of the Canaanites, and the Hittites, and the Amorites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites. See, he wants to use us in these last days to take somebody's place. Somebody that couldn't go with him all the way and finish the job that was assigned to them. So just be ready. It could be that there's not much time left and we have to be about his business. And he wants to bring change in our finances, in our health, in relationships, and maybe even location. Maybe he wants us to move to another location. And he wants to remove the effects of things that happened in the past in some of our lives. Past memories. Maybe some people are locked into bitterness, unforgiveness, low self-esteem, self-pity, guilt, fear, anxiety, etc. And he wants to set people free from that today. And these things could be preventing somebody's healing out there or the purpose that the Father has for you. And also robbing your joy. We want to pray right now. All you have to do, you have to make sure that you submitted everything to the Father. Ask him to come into your spirit, to fill you with his spirit, mortify the deeds of your flesh, and make you more and more like Jesus Yeshua every day. Bring the fruit of the Spirit out of our lives. If you have done that, willing to do it right now, I decree in the mighty name of Jesus Yeshua, all these past memories, this low self-esteem, self-pity, unforgiveness, fear, anxiety, whatever it is, I rebuke it out of your life right now in the name of Yeshua. Be free to serve the Father in fullness of joy and purpose, destiny, unhindered in the mighty name of Yeshua, by the blood of Yeshua. So the Father has a purpose for us, and he wants to put us in place. He wants to put us in our battle positions for this last battle. And we know we can't do it alone. He told Moses in verse 14, and the Father said unto Moses, I am that I am. Anything you need me to be, I will be. And he said, thou shalt say unto the children of Israel, I am has sent me unto you. And this is the way the Father speaks. In verse 17, and I have said, I will bring you up out of the affliction of Egypt unto the land of the Canaanites and the Hittites and the Amorites and the Perizzites and the Hivites and the Jebusites, unto the land flowing with milk and honey. The Father doesn't say if. He says, I am going to do it. Not only that, in verse 22, he wants to give us a money transfer. Not the money transfer that the Antichrist is going to give, but a transfer of money to accomplish his purpose. In verse 22, but every woman shall borrow of her neighbor, and of her that sojourneth in her house, jewels of silver, and jewels of gold, and clothing, and you shall put them upon your sons and upon your daughters, and you shall spoil the Egyptians. So he's taking care of us. And nothing or nobody can stop the Father from bringing change into his people's lives. You could read for yourself in Exodus chapter 14 that the Father opened up the Red Sea and closed it on the Egyptians. And he brought them into purpose and destiny. He set them free. And he canceled all the debts of a whole nation. They borrowed gold and silver and clothing from the Egyptians. And the Father canceled all those debts at the Red Sea. The debts of a whole nation. Wow. Go with me to Ezekiel, the book of Ezekiel, chapter 37. Ezekiel's after Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentations. Ezekiel, right before Daniel. Ezekiel 37, we'll talk about change. Maybe you feel like you've been sitting on the sidelines. Well, you're going into the game right now. If you submitted everything to the Father, surrendered everything to the Father, and are allowing him to work on you on a daily basis, then he's putting you into the game if you're not in the game. It's a game of life. He doesn't want to close that rapture door if there's one person that's supposed to go through it. So we may be that person who ministers to that one person. But we need to be about his business. Remember when Yeshua borrowed that boat and preached to the people at the shore on the land. And after he finished, he gave them the boat and said, you go back and you fish. They caught more than a boatload of fish. They had to bring another boat over. But really what it's saying, if you take care of my business, I'll take care of your business. So whatever we were born to do, it's happening right now. As he closes time, as he splits the sky and brings us up into rapture in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye. He wants to finish his work on the earth before the rapture. And the finisher, the Father himself, wants to use us to finish his work. Such an honor. Ezekiel 37, starting in verse 1. The hand of the Father was upon me, and carried me out in the spirit of the Father, and set me down in the midst of the valley, which was full of bones. And he caused me to pass by them round about, and behold, there were very many in the open valley, and lo, they were dry. And he said unto me, Son of man, can these bones live? And I answered, O Father, you know. He said, prophesy unto these bones, and say, you dry bones, hear the word of the Father. Thus said the Father in verse 5, unto these bones, behold, I will cause breath to enter into you, and you shall live. In verse 7, so I prophesied as I was commanded, and as I prophesied, Ezekiel said, there was a noise, and behold, a shaking, and the bones came together, bone to bone. He wants to bring everything together in our lives. Again, he wants to touch us in our finances, in our health, in relationships, and possibly even location, change the location where we live. He wants to bring everything together in our lives for us to fulfill his purpose. So just receive that right now. Whether it be healing, finances, relationships, let him touch your life right now as long as you surrendered everything to him. And let him work on you on a daily basis. In verse 9, then he said unto me, prophesy unto the wind. Prophesy, son of man, and say to the wind, thus said the Father, come from the four winds, O breath, and breathe upon these slain that they may live. So he's talking to the four winds. He's showing me it's the spiritual blessings from the wind, physical, financial, emotionally. He wants to bring everything together to make us whole so we can fulfill his purpose without being distracted in any way. And remember, he will give us that wealth transfer to help us to do his work. And as I mentioned earlier, the Antichrist has an end-time wealth transfer to get the money that he wants to give to people. But as I mentioned on a prior podcast, there's a biometrical scan that people have to go through to get this money. I believe it's on the index finger. I believe that whole biometrical scan is the mark of the beast. On the Antichrist's wealth transfer, so many people are trying to invest in cryptocurrency to try to make a lot of money so fast. But I did some research in cryptocurrency, and the last 3 digits of their patent number is 666. Somebody anonymously started this cryptocurrency back on October 31st, Halloween 2008. And crypt is a burial vault. It's got all the earmarking of Satan. Stay away from it. And they want a biometrical ID just to get involved in it. And this system with the blockchain, I believe, is leading to the mark of the beast, the ultimate biometrical scan that's needed, as I mentioned before, for that wealth transfer from the Antichrist or Nasara Jasara. Be very careful. So I prophesied as he commanded me, and the breath came into them, and they lived and stood upon their feet, an exceeding great army. Wow, that's what he wants to do. He wants us to get together as his army. In Joel chapter 2, it talks about his army, and we're following him. He's the leader. He's the general. Then in verse 15, the word of the Father came again unto me, saying, Moreover, thou son of man, take thee one stick, and write upon it for Judah, and for the children of Israel his companions, and take another stick, and write upon it for Joseph, the stick of Ephraim, and for all the house of Israel his companions. And join them one to another into one stick, and they shall become one in your hand. So remember, at the time of Rehoboam and Jeroboam, 10 tribes went up north and 2 tribes stayed down below. And eventually those 10 tribes under the tribe of Ephraim were defeated by their enemies and were scattered all over the world. And most of us came from those 10 tribes. So what the Father wants to do in these last days, he wants us and the Jewish people to become one stick. He wants us to help the Jewish people to recognize that Yeshua is their Messiah too. But he also wants us to go back into the Jewish feast days, which are really feast days of the Father. Learn them, but learn them through the eyes of Yeshua, not through the eyes of the Jewish people. But to see how every one of those feast days is all about Yeshua. And as I mentioned on a previous podcast, the feast days are love letters from Yeshua to us and from us to Yeshua as we learn more about him and as we celebrate those feast days. So he wants to join us together and make it one stick in Yeshua. We don't want any of their customs and traditions, no. To go into the feast days as the Father leads us and glean from those feast days more knowledge about him and how we can learn more and more about him. Remember, Yeshua is a Jew, was a Jew, always will be a Jew. But it was Constantine that took all the Jewishness out of the early believers' teaching. And it's important for us to get back to those feast days and to get back to what Yeshua taught the apostles, what the apostles taught others. So the Father wants to shake things up. There's a whole lot of shaking that's going to be going on. So we who cannot be shaken will remain. If you go to the book of Acts with me, Acts chapter 2, you can see how the Father shook up the establishment. And he's ready to shake up the establishment to such an extent that Satan will be so glad when we're raptured out of here. Because we're the ones that are holding back the tribulation from starting. We are the restrainer, as mentioned in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. Acts chapter 2, of course you know they got filled with the Spirit of the Father, had all this boldness. And in Acts chapter 3, verse 1, now Peter and John went up together into the temple at the hour of prayer, being the 9th hour. That was 3 o'clock in the afternoon. That was the time that Yeshua gave up his life for us. 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And that's why they were having a prayer meeting. And a certain man lame from his mother's womb was carried, whom they laid daily at the gate of the temple, which is called Beautiful. They asked alms of them that entered into the temple. And Peter John said, we don't have any silver or gold, but what we have give I unto you. In the name of Yeshua, rise up and walk. And he did. He never walked before. And immediately, his feet and ankle bones received strength. Wow, immediate. Maybe you need an immediate miracle right now. Just receive it. After you surrendered everything to the Father, receive that immediate miracle right now. Maybe one that you've been waiting for 40, 50 years. And he can do it. And he's doing it right now. Because he's wrapping things up. I want you to say it with me that the Father is wrapping things up on my behalf. He's wrapping things up, getting everything in place so he can really use us in his final push and put us into that battle position that he has ordained for us before the foundation of the world. So as a result of this miracle, 5,000 people got saved. In chapter 4, verse 3, the authorities laid hands on them and put them in hold until the next day, for it was now eventime. And verse 7, and when they had set them in the midst, they asked, by what power or by what name have you done this? In verse 10, be it known unto you, Peter said, and to all the people of Israel, that by the name of Yeshua, whom you crucified, whom the Father raised from the dead, even by him does this man stand here before you whole. Verse 12, neither is there salvation in any other, for there is no other name under heaven given among men whereby we must be saved. And when he saw the boldness of Peter and John in verse 13, and perceived that they were unlearned and ignorant men, they marveled, and they took knowledge of them that they had been with Yeshua. See, the Father wants to shake things up. There's so many terrible things that are happening in the world, and so many plans that the enemy has for young people. And we know that gender was assigned to us at the moment of conception. We got some weird people out there trying to teach kids weird ideas. It's worse than Sodom and Gomorrah, but we know the Father wants to shake things up and rescue some people before the rapture using us. We just need to be ready. In verse 18, and the authorities called them and commanded them not to speak at all nor teach in the name of Yeshua. But Peter and John answered and said unto them, whether it be right in the sight of the Father to hearken unto you more than unto the Father, judge we. For we cannot but speak the things which ye have seen and heard. So the apostles went into the presence of Yeshua and cried out and said, give us more boldness. We want more signs and wonders to be done by your name. And that's exactly what happened in chapter 5. In verse 12, and by the hands of the apostles were many signs and wonders wrought among the people, and they were all with one accord in Solomon's porch, right in the temple. Verse 15, insomuch that they brought forth the sick into the streets and laid them on beds and couches, that at least the shadow of Peter passing by might overshadow some of them. The least of the miracles was that anybody who got into the shadow of Peter was healed. There came also a multitude out of the cities round about unto Jerusalem, bringing sick folks, and them which were vexed with unclean spirits, and were healed every one. They resisted what the authorities wanted them to do. Verse 29, the authorities threatened them again. Peter and the other apostles answered and said, we have to obey the Father rather than men. But look at how the Father upset the ruling authorities. And he's doing it right now because he wants to rescue maybe that one person that needs to go through the rapture door before he closes it. Just make yourself available. If you turn me to 1 Corinthians chapter 15. 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 51. This is the ultimate change. Behold, I show you a mystery. We shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed. In a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump. For the trumpet shall sound, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed. The only people that are going to hear this trumpet sound are we who go into rapture. In verse 53, for this corruptible must put on incorruption, and this mortal must put on immortality. So when this corruptible shall put on incorruption, and this mortal shall put on immortality, then shall be brought to pass the saying that is written, death is swallowed up in victory. O death, where is thy sting? O grave, where is thy victory? Our body's going to have the same body that Yeshua had after his resurrection. No more pain, no more tiredness, new bodies. It'd be so great. In verse 56, the sting of death is sin, and the strength of sin is the law. But thanks be unto the Father, which gives us the victory through Yeshua Therefore, my beloved brethren, be ye steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of Yeshua, for as much as you know that your labor is not in vain in Yeshua. It's the time right now for whatever purpose the Father has for us to go forward into that purpose and to be on His timetable. Remember, the day runs from 6 p.m. to 6 p.m. 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. are the 12 hours of the day that Yeshua talked about. 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. are the 12 hours of the night, or the night watches. And I have 2 books on my website under the written messages, the bottom. They're both free. A book called Noon, which talks about the feast days and different hours of the day when the Father moves the most, including the night visions, the night seasons, and also Is the Trinity Really a Mystery? Explaining the Trinity. The Trinity is the Father manifesting Himself as the Father in the Son and as the Spirit that makes us holy. There's only one Spirit, Ephesians 4:4. So we're going to see the Father throughout eternity in the face of Yeshua, and He's sitting on that throne. Revelation 4:2, again, there's one sitting upon the throne. There's only one. It's the Father manifesting Himself. But Constantine, with all those nations around him, wanted to bring the pagans into his form of Christianity and said, you worship 3 gods. We'll make this Christianity worshiping 3 gods, but we'll make them one, and we'll call it a mystery. So please, pray about what I'm saying. Go back to the Word and search it out. Search out my book. Is the Trinity Really a Mystery? So besides our bodies going from corruption to incorruption, we're going into immortality. We're going to live forever. And this is all going to happen in a moment and a twinkling of an eye at the last trump. Remember, the first trump, we will assemble. And then the last trump, we will go. And this springtime is a beautiful time for this rapture to happen. As I mentioned, Yeshua gave up His life 31 AD, Wednesday, April 25th. And if you add 2,000 years to that, because it's 2,000 years from the time He gave up His life until the end of the tribulation or Yeshua's second coming, you come up to 2031. And if you subtract 7 years for the tribulation, you're into 2024, where the rapture could happen. We don't know the exact time, but we can know the seasons. And at first trump, we will assemble. We'll know He's coming back. And so everybody who goes in the rapture, dead or alive, what took place spiritually in their lives and our lives at the moment of regeneration is instantly completed on a physical level as our bodies are transformed during the rapture in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye. That is the ultimate change. So the change He started when we surrendered everything to Him will be completed physically going up in the air at the last trump. Go with me to 1 John chapter 3. 1 John chapter 3, verse 1. Behold, what manner of love the Father had bestowed upon us, that we should be called the sons of the Father. Therefore the world knoweth us not, because it didn't know Him. How? Because they didn't know that Yeshua is the Father manifested in the flesh. We just read before that the Father said to Moses, I am that I am. In John chapter 8, Yeshua said, before Abraham was, I am. There's only one I am. Remember in 1 Timothy 3:16 that the Father was manifested in the flesh, seen of angels, preached unto the Gentiles, believed on in the world, and received up into heaven in Yeshua. When Yeshua ascended, Yeshua is the Father manifested in the flesh. It's that simple and that beautiful. Verse 2, Beloved, now are we the sons of the Father, and it does not yet appear what we shall be, but we know that when He shall appear, we shall be like Him, for we shall see Him as He is. Instantly changed. And see, the Father doesn't want us to know the date of the rapture. He wants us to be ready at all times and to eagerly wait for Him and look for His coming. Just like in Matthew chapter 25, 10 virgins waiting for the bridegroom to come. We're the bride looking for the bridegroom to come. The last podcast I talked in depth about that. And for us, allowing the Father to get us ready for the rapture and the marriage supper of the Lamb. You see, the messages on my podcast are not for everyone. These messages are for those who want to be part of the Father's remnant and eventually go in the rapture. But so many believers are caught up into Constantine's form of Christianity, The last podcast I mentioned so much about these holidays that Constantine set up. And the number one written message on my website at henrywalker.org is, when was Yeshua born? When did he die? When did he rise? It's so important for believers to read that message and study the word for themselves. Also, I talk about, on my website, there's a message on the Sabbath versus Sunday, how the Catholic Church changed the solemnity of the Sabbath to Sunday. And also, I have a message, wine is a mocker. We know that priests in the Old Testament could not drink wine when they went into the inner court where the presence of the Father was. And Peter says we are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood. So we are priests. We're always in the presence of the Father. There's no way that believers should drink wine, intoxicating wine. And it also says that kings should not drink wine. Again, we are a royal priesthood, a chosen generation. And the word says that wine is a mocker, not dependent on how much a person drinks. Wine is a mocker. So in my message, I talk about that the word wine in the Old and the New Testament is the same word for intoxicating wine and grape juice. And one has to read the context of what's being written to understand whether the wine that's described is intoxicating wine or grape juice. But the choice is up to you. I just want to help people to be part of the remnant and eventually go into rapture. So as many of you know, some of you may not know, this is a pro-life ministry. We believe that life begins at conception. And every podcast I pray for the babies in the womb. Remember, with the babies in the womb, their hearts begin to beat around 18 days. And around 4 months, their hearts are pumping about 25 quarts of blood per day. Wow. These babies are lives, not tissues. So if you want to join with me, I'm going to pray for the babies in the womb right now. Father, touch the babies in the womb. Bring them to a full birth, Father. And we give you all the praise and the honor, Father, in the mighty name of Yeshua, by the blood of Yeshua. And if any of you listening out there had an abortion, repent. Ask the Father to forgive you and go on and follow him into purpose and destiny, and don't look back. Also, in every podcast, I mention this also, that if your flesh or Satan is giving you any thoughts that are contrary to the Father's word, just say out loud, say, Yeshua, I thank you for that crown of thorns around your head. That was for me. That means my mind is protected by your blood. I only think your thoughts and give those thoughts to the Father. So remember, until next time, this is Evangelist Henry Walker saying, greater is the Father in you, your daddy, the King of the universe, than anything or anybody in the world.
Oh yeah.